fact, I swear, I drink coffee first thing in the morning just to get my heart started. That's kind of my mantra. I gotta have coffee to get my heart started. I had coffee made. I think it might have been, because I wanted coffee on my flight, it might have been when they first invented freeze-dried coffee, for all I know. It could have been, because Whirlpool Corporation was doing all the freeze-dried stuff. So I had coffee black. I had coffee with cream, and I had coffee with cream and sugar. And depending on the day or the time or whatever was going on, then I would pick the kind of coffee I wanted. I used to talk to Dave and Jim about their drinks on the flight. They wouldn't have anything to do with coffee. They were Boy Scouts. They were health nuts. They just wouldn't drink coffee. So I said, "What are you going to do?" And they said, "Well, we're going to have hot chocolate." And I said, "You're going to drink hot chocolate 3 times a day for 13 days, huh?" I don't think so. You're going to have a problem drinking hot chocolate, sweet, sticky hot chocolate for 13 days in a row. Oh no, we're going to be fine. So they put on their hot chocolate. About 3 days into the flight, I'm checking my coffee supply and finding that it's way down. They've been stealing my coffee. We had a little talk about that. I had to chop that off right away. Okay, now we come to the tough stuff. If you eat so much and you drink so much, sooner or later, you got to do something else, right? It's inevitable. You can't hold it for 13 days, I guarantee you. Well, the urine is easy because we had a relief tube. We just pee in it, and it went into a big plastic bag. And every once in a while on a flight, we'd open a valve to the outside, and the vacuum would suck all that stuff out. And you know what happened? It turned into a cloud of snow. It was white snow too, by the way. And that white snow cloud was going the same direction, the same time, the same speed we were. So all I had to do was look out the window. Anytime I wanted to check it out, just look out the window and there's that cloud going right along with us. I sometimes think that's why we did mid-course corrections, to get away from that cloud. Okay, that takes care of that. I gotta tell you, while I was in lunar orbit, my inclination in lunar orbit was 27 degrees. So as the moon was rotating, I'm staying in a kind of a fixed position, and the moon was kind of rotating underneath me, so my orbit would slide just a little bit each time I come around. I had a mass spectrometer on board in my scientific instrument module, which is in an open bay in back of me. And every once in a while, according to the flight plan, I'd put this thing out and let it run in lunar orbit to see if there were anything in lunar orbit, any particles at all. Well, I did that about the 3rd time I did that. I got a call from Houston. They said, "We're picking up something in orbit." And I thought, that's kind of interesting because there's not supposed to be any atmosphere here. Well, we don't know for sure what it is, but we'll let you know. They called me back a few hours later. We said, "We figured it out. What is it?" "It's urine." We'd done a urine dump. and that cloud, although you couldn't see it, that cloud was still floating around in lunar orbit. So that's what happened to that. Okay, the solid waste is a whole different story. We didn't have a toilet. What we had were plastic bags. But we had very unusual plastic bags. They were about this long, about this big around, and there was a flange on the open end that was adhesive. Now, does that conjure up any pictures for anybody? Do you all know kind of what I'm talking about? I tell you, big thrill. Sit back on the couch, watch Dave Scott float in front of me with that plastic bag stuck on his butt. Not very cute, but it got the job done, I gotta tell you. So anyway, when you're done, you clean yourself, you take the adhesive parts, you put them together and you seal it, then you have to write your name on the outside of the bag. And the time of flight, because the doctors are insistent that they're gonna analyze all that crap after the flight, right? So that's what we were stuck with on the flight. We fooled them. They never got ours. Because when I did my spacewalk on the way home, I suggested that Jim hand me the big canvas bag that had all that stuff in it, out the hatch. And it came floating out the hatch, and I just watched it go. And it came back to Earth, parallel to us, going the same direction, same speed, same time we were, but it didn't have a heat shield. And we did. So it burned up in the atmosphere. And there was a lot of talk in Houston about, after our flight, that they found a new belt around the Earth called the fecal belt. Anyway, so that's what happens. That's kind of like living and playing in space. Couple of lessons I learned from all of that, and one is it's not necessary to be really, really close to the people that you work with if you work really well with them professionally. What I found on our flight was that Dave and I were always constantly kind of tense between us. And the upshot of that was that we had a full packed flight plan with scientific experiments every minute of our flight, right? And I developed this attitude that there is no way possible that I would not do everything. Because I didn't want Dave, after the flight, to say, oh, well, Al decided not to do that. And Dave was the same way. So there's a little bit of that was good for us. We worked really well professionally, but we're not very good friends. And so we kind of kept our distance on the flight, and I thought that was good. And Dave and I had our little things from time to time, but we worked well together. And kind of interesting, because when they came back up from lunar orbit, they were in orbit right behind me, what was left of the lunar module, which is the ascent stage. And Dave stopped about 50 feet out and said, let's take pictures. And we did. And Dave said, okay, we're ready to dock. And I said, well, before we dock, Dave, recognizing that I'm the one who could go home, we have some things to talk about. And it was the quickest discussion in the history of the space program, I think. But it just shows you that that a little bit of tension between the crews is probably not a bad thing, as long as you work together, as long as it doesn't go too far. Apollo 15 was, without question, the most scientific flight in the Apollo program. We did, it was kind of interesting in the day because the flight planners kind of figured out timelines and how much you could do, and they would kind of fill up our flight plan with all these scientific and photographic things we needed to do, but they'd also leave a little space here and there that, be off. And what happened is we got so many requests from other scientific investigators that we filled up all those holes. So we ended up with what would normally have been, on a normal flight, would have been about 125% of what a normal flight would try and do, okay? And we did them all. And that's why I think Apollo 15 is still thought of as the most scientific, because we really, really put ourselves out to do the science. So that's about as much as I can tell you. I think the movie probably tells you a lot more than I did about the flight. Let me just mention a couple of other things. So, some things that have kind of occurred to me since the flight. I was in a position for a while on sort of the back left corner of the moon, where I was shadowed from both the Earth and from the sun. Let me explain first. You know what the dark side of the moon is? That's the side away from the sun. And we see that when we see the phases of the moon, okay? The back side is the side away from the Earth. A lot of people get those two a little bit confused. But the dark side is away from the sun, the back side is away from the Earth. Now, I had a pie-shaped wedge in back of the moon where I was in a zone where I was shadowed from the sun and shadowed from the Earth, okay? And I saw a universe that I didn't expect to see, and I saw a universe out there that was just mind-boggling. I had 37 stars, the 37 brightest stars in the sky I used for navigation on the way out and on the way back. But when I got to that pie-shaped wedge behind the moon,